Welcome back to another episode of the Motions for Mindfulness podcast, where we file motions in court and in life to better serve our clients. I'm your host, Bethany Allen, a member of the 2024-2025 Missouri Bar Leadership Academy class. And I'm excited to bring to you this special podcast series as a part of the Leadership Academy's efforts to raise awareness and inspire during well-being in Law Week, which is May 5th through 9th. Sponsored by the Missouri Bar, this initiative aligns with the national movement led by the Institute for Wellbeing, which seeks to help lawyers not just survive, but thrive. Through this series, we'll tackle one of the biggest challenges in the legal profession. Today, we're diving into emotional well-being specifically, a topic that doesn't always get the attention it deserves in the legal field. As attorneys, we navigate high-pressure environments. So today, we're going to talk about the tools and strategies and real-life challenges that comes with managing emotional being in the legal profession. To help me discuss this topic today, I have two of my wonderful Leadership Academy classmates, John McKenzie and Holly Weiss. John and McKenzie, John and Holly, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what you all do in the legal profession right now?
Yes, I currently work at the Attorney General's office, Missouri Attorney General's office in the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, and mainly prosecute crimes related to neglect, abuse, and fraud in the Medicaid system. Prior to that, I was a line prosecutor in Boone County. Yeah.
And I'm Assistant General Counsel and Policy Director at the University of Central Missouri. So I advise the university in legal matters. And prior to that, I did 3 years of personal injury law in the Kansas City area.
Awesome. So what we want to do in this specific podcast is just talk about that emotional well-being, right? And how important it is for us as lawyers to be emotionally sound so we can serve our clients, serve the community in whatever capacity. With Holly, you serving the school, and being a general counsel, and John, where you serve, just trying to figure out ways and strategies and tools that we can give lawyers to be of service to the profession in general, right? And so I'm going to ask a little bit of questions about certain topics, but the reality of emotional well-being in law is kind of the highlight of this specific topic. Many attorneys face overwhelming stress and burnout, right, in this profession. How does emotional dysregulation manifest in the legal profession, and what are some early warning signs that lawyers should look out for when dealing with it?
What comes to mind is just work product, I would say, quality of work. Sometimes through just, life happens, and, we all have a general response to the negative aspects of life that happen to us emotionally. But there can be occasions where an attorney will be in court and they're just not. You could tell they're not on their game as much anymore. Their arguments on their legal arguments on emotion aren't as succinct as they used to be, and that's how it can manifest itself in one aspect, I would say. Others is just sort of just that the collegial interaction that I've had with other attorneys over time, when it comes to like maybe plea negotiations or reviewing a case file, and even that, maybe a person who was sort of outgoing and we could work well together with is now more hostile, a bit more snappy, and so that adversely affects even just how we're going to negotiate a case and how the outcome is going to turn out just by that alone.
Holly?
Yeah, I think those are great examples of how you can see it manifest in the attorney or the lawyer's work, and then there's also kind of those outwardly things that you might notice from your colleagues. So are they regulating their emotions by going to a lot of happy hours? Are they regulating their emotions by constantly having their door closed when they normally have their door open? And the way that they are, do they show up to the office late often, or are they leaving early often? What do their outward appearances look? So there are some outwardly things that you can see where an attorney is struggling with emotional regulation, and then there's also the work product that you can notice to see. And it might also be things that you're noticing about yourself, am I struggling to manage my emotions? And these are things that I'm also noticing that I'm doing. Rather than sitting with my emotions, I'm using XYZ to handle it, or I'm not handling it, and so my work product is struggling.
Great. And I think that those are both great points. And when you talk about those things, it's almost scary to think about that dysregulation as far as how it impacts us in the legal profession, and how it impacts how we try cases, how it impacts how we interact with clients, right? So we want to make sure that we have those cues to kind of see, okay, I'm starting to emotionally dysregulate. How can I get myself back to where I need to be so I could serve and do what I need to do in the capacity that I need to do it every day? And so when we talk about the high stake nature of legal work, right, and our constant exposure to difficult situations, whatever it might be, the school could be facing something, or, you could be facing something difficult with your, the Attorney General's office or anything like that. So when you're facing those difficult situations, how does that affect a lawyer's ability to regulate their emotions effectively when the stakes are so high all the time? There's always that pressure.
Well, I think it depends on the person, because I think the main thing is there will be stressors in our job and our profession by virtue of us being attorneys and the various positions that we occupy. And I think as a lawyer, it's important. I remember I heard somebody use the word like, have a center, have something that's going to kind of keep you grounded and focused inside, at work, whether that be at the courtroom where you're drafting something, or whether you're at home. So that way, whatever the pressure is, you're still able to be grounded and effectively, I guess it's sort of like bend, not break is probably it. I've had occasions where I've had a life stressor and I'm at work and I'm like, hey, I need to go through some discovery, and it's like, okay, let me just take some time for myself. Let me digest this stress and this situation, and take a step back and breathe for a minute before I dive in and return to, whether it be reviewing police body cam or interacting with investigators or law enforcement to give them feedback on a particular case. And so, that's just kind of how I've taken that, is that there will be the pressures, there will be hard cases, there will be high volume situations, but I need to make sure that I'm allowing myself to sort of move with the flow. I guess this is the way I can articulate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something John mentioned yesterday is that, emotional resilience is not something that you're going to watch this podcast segment and suddenly you now have all the skills necessary to be emotionally resilient. It's something that you are constantly learning and adjusting to. But I would encourage attorneys to start now thinking about the ways that you can implement practices for being emotionally resilient and having emotional breaks and check-ins before it affects your practice or before you have those stressors. So that way when you notice, I just had an interaction with a client that felt emotional or felt tense because my emotions are deregulated and because I'm struggling with something else. What's my emotional check-in moment? What can I do for 10 seconds? Or what's my outlet for coming back to my center? Thinking about the different steps that you can take to come back. So that way, when you are dealing with those stresses and you have a difficult opposing counsel who gives you those types of stress, or let's say you've handed in a contract and it comes back with lots of red lines and you think, oh my goodness, my work product is struggling and I'm failing at this. You already have those different tips and skills ready and at hand, because emotional resilience is not a one and done thing. You are constantly working on and regulating it, especially in a career that has stressors. Sometimes you never have a stressor, and then other times you have 3 in 1 week, and you've got to constantly be thinking about what am I doing to keep my emotions regulated so I can better serve my clients or my community or the justice system.
You hit it on the head right there, because I'm thinking of my own profession, right? I'm a compliance lawyer, and my clients aren't the traditional clients. My clients are the attorneys that I serve within my firm, making sure that they're in compliance with the conflicts rules and doing what they need to do. But as you said, sometimes those clients, they're in high emotional situations, right? They're dealing with their own things. So we have to kind of almost act as, advisors for them in that capacity as well. So if your emotions are too high and you can't regulate yourself, how can you bring them back down to where they need to be to say, hey, this is the steps that we should be taking, this is what we should be doing. So all in all, we just want to be able to serve, right? We want to be able to serve in the best way that we can. And some days we might be able to do it better than other days. However, the goal is to kind of find that balance, and this is what I can do now to be better in this situation for my profession, right? I kind of want to switch gears to kind of talk about work environments and the legal profession as like a community, right? The Missouri Bar Journal released an article on lawyer wellness in a toxic work environment, and it highlights how psychological threats at work can lead to fear, anger, and withdrawal. And I think it was an important article for, the Missouri Bar to kind of talk about, because that is something that we should be talking about, right? The environments that we're in as lawyers, how does that affect us? And so what steps can lawyers take when they find themselves in those toxic workplaces that negatively impact their well-being and ability to practice effectively?
Well, I think first off, I would say, and I would just do this plug, is like the Missouri Bar has the Missouri Lawyers Assistance Program, MOLAP. If you find yourself in a situation, where you feel like you don't know where to go, I would encourage you to reach out to MOLAP, because there's always somebody there who understands what it's like to be a lawyer, what it's like to deal with the toxicity of whether that be a boss or a judge or opposing counsel, something like that. And so I would start there, because the truth is there's no one size fits all cure for everyone to deal with these kind of scenarios, I would say. But beyond that, sometimes it's worth considering whether the environment that you're in is one that you should be staying in, whether you should remove yourself temporarily or long term, whether you move yourself and take a few minutes, take an extended lunch and kind of gather yourself. I recall myself being in a scenario. It wasn't quite as toxic, but I remember I got in a shouting match, and I stopped being objective. I could not do legal analysis anymore. It just became, I'm going to win. You're not going to overtalk me and beat me in this thing. I'm going to beat you in this thing. And eventually I had to, I needed to kind of dial it back. Even if the person wasn't going to dial it back, I still had to do my job and be effective, represent the state's position on various cases, and not allow that toxicity to effectively infect my own legal practice. And so, that's an option. Another option is, sometimes changing a job is okay. Find a firm or somewhere else that will not treat you that way and will value you, I think is also paramount as well. So I'll let Holly kind of share.
Yeah, I think that in the legal profession, can be maybe in the past a sense of pride in being a difficult career, especially for young attorneys, this idea of work them really hard, and that can be toxic depending on the work environment that the young attorney is in. And I think that there are actually great examples of how supportive environments are better for young attorneys, environments that build the young attorneys up. Leadership Academy is a great example actually of, a lot of young attorneys have imposter syndrome and are struggling with, should I even be at the table? But the more support that young attorneys feel, I think the better their work product is, the more they're willing to put themselves out there and discover the skills and the accomplishments and how much they can give to a firm. So I think happy employees, happy attorneys tend to want to stay and give firms their best work products. And I think that if you are an attorney experiencing a toxic work environment or in a field that feels toxic, your work product is not going to be the same. I've been very fortunate that I've always felt extremely supported by supervisors in the fields that I've been in. But in my previous area of practice, I did not handle my emotions very well when working with different clients, and I could feel myself struggling with my interactions with clients. My supervisor actually noticed and said, it's okay to say this area of practice isn't for me anymore, and was very supportive as I made my way out of personal injury, because I could feel my practice of law or my practice in that area wasn't what I wanted it to be. And so I think that it's okay to have that conversation as an attorney of saying that maybe this isn't the environment I want to be in, especially if you feel like your work product could be better in a different area of law. But I will say, if you feel like you're in a toxic work environment, I think it's extremely important to use the resources and avenues to set healthy boundaries with human resources or whatever that avenue is at your firm, and say something and tell someone, because if you're experiencing that, there's a possibility that somebody else at that firm is as well. And I think it's so important for attorneys to support and help each other and to build communities, because I think that attorneys who have communities to go to and support systems thrive and are better attorneys for it, better attorneys in the legal community and then the legal practice.
Awesome, and I totally agree with you. At the end of the day, we want to have those resources put in place, and I think the Missouri Bar does a good job of that, like you said, with MOLAP and things like that. Even if you don't feel like you have the immediate support within your firm or in your organization, or maybe you're new and you don't want to ruffle any feathers, there are those avenues that you can look back to say, hey, I'm struggling with being able to do my job. I need to be able to do my job to the best of my abilities. How can I get in a better situation? What avenue should I take? So I just want to give you all a brief moment to kind of talk about Wellbeing in Law Week and what you have planned for the emotional day, which is Friday, I believe. I'm also on that day. So anything you want to share quickly about that?
Just, I guess, stay tuned. I mean, yeah, it's still like.
Yeah, stay tuned. I think we're going to be highlighting some different tips and ideas for attorneys to use for emotional check-ins for themselves. Like, here are some ways to notice when your emotions are deregulated, and how you can do a check-in with yourself to bring yourself back to that center that John was talking about, so you can be an effective attorney and serve your clients and your legal community better. So we'll be sharing those tips, and we're excited to help support attorneys in their practice.
So thank you all for joining another episode of Motion for Mindfulness. Remember, emotional well-being isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, so we can perform our jobs at the highest level. And remember, if you're struggling with emotional well-being, remember that you're not alone. Resources like the Missouri Lawyer Assistance Program, MOLAP, offers confidential support to attorneys facing stress, anxiety, or workplace challenges. Taking even a moment each day to check in with yourself, engage in healthy coping mechanisms, and create boundaries can make a huge difference in how you interact in your personal and professional life when serving clients. Thank you.